Welcome back, everybody. Jaysin Static with another episode of the interview series. I'm Jaysin Static. You, sir, are
Vincent Sawyer.
Vincent Sawyer. Are you ready for question number 2?
Why not?
Why not? Why not? What's the biggest misconception you think fans have about the process of creating and developing a wrestling character? And how do you think wrestlers and promotions can work to change that perception?
I think a lot of fans think that characters are just one-dimensional things. They just look on the outside. And it could be a thing of either they don't care, they're just there for one show, and they're just like, oh, I'm just here to check it out.
Right.
It could be people who have seen it a lot. And then there's fans that will go to these shows and they'll have that one-dimensional concept of a character.
Okay.
And then they'll just constantly follow you around. They want to like talk to you. They think that you could be their friend. No, I'm gonna be honest with you. A lot of wrestling characters, they're dicks.
Okay.
That's just how it is.
What do you mean by one-dimensional?
They only just look at it from the outside, and it varies. Like imagine you're like watching The Undertaker. And you're just like, oh, that's just a big dude in leather.
Right.
That's just a big dude in leather. He wears a big brimmed hat. He talks in a really low gravelly voice. He flips his eyes back in his head every once in a while. And he sticks his tongue out. That's how a lot of indie fans kind of look at independent wrestlers.
Okay.
And I get it in a ways. If you're not really going to a bunch of shows, you're not spending time getting invested in the character.
Mm-hmm.
Across multiple shows. In terms of the other part of the question, what can promoters do to change that?
Yeah,
I think not a lot of promoters really have a say in someone's character. It's a lot of basis on the wrestler themselves,
mm-hmm.
and it's all their work. You could have outside influences. You could have people throwing you suggestions.
Right.
And you can take certain parts of people's suggestions and add it to the character if you think it fits.
Right.
And here's the thing about wrestling. If it doesn't work, you can figure it out.
Right.
You can change it. You can figure out what does work. You might try an idea. You could try an idea, and if it doesn't work out for you, you could maybe take a little time to figure out what does work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but not a lot of promoters I've talked to really have influence on your character.
Okay.
I think they could add, provide you with suggestions during matches and during promos to really promote your character. But I think it's just solely up to the wrestler themselves.
Do you think that it would be good for wrestling promoters to be like, hey, this is kind of what I want from you? That way it helps build the character into something bigger and better, instead of it just solely being on the wrestler themselves. Because, for lack of a better way of saying this is, a lot of wrestlers are kind of egoists. You know what I mean? So sometimes some guys don't want to listen. They only want to do what they want to do. And is that a detriment to the company and to the industry as a whole?
I think sometimes, if you do get those really egotistical young wrestlers who come in and they're like, I just want to be the biggest, baddest dude out here.
Like Eagle Eye?
Yeah, a lot like Eagle Eye. That piece of shit. I've seen it a lot lately where you get these young guys that come into it and they're like, oh, being a wrestler is the coolest thing you can do. I'm going to come out here. I'm going to kick ass. For anyone watching these who thinks they can be a wrestler, I'm going to tell you right now, you know what your finish is going to be for the first year? Taking the other person's.
Yeah.
That's going to be your finish. And it's going to humble the shit out of you. That's why I feel like every single wrestler should start out as a heel. Because if you come in as a babyface, you get an ego. People love you. People think that you're great. You get cheered. So you're going to come in, you're going to be big and bad, you're going to have that hype behind you. That's not true. I didn't ask for your input. I think everybody should start out as a heel. You start out as a heel, you start out being hated, you start out doing heels go through embarrassing shit. A lot of times promoters want heels to do embarrassing shit, especially very early into their career.
Right.
Like being a bodyguard or some shit like that. And it's just, I did that when I started out. And it was embarrassing. Like the things that I had to go through was embarrassing. And it cuts that egotistical shit right out.
Do you think with, you said that you much rather see new guys come in as heels. Do you think that heels can get that, overinflated ego as well, because they get hated, they get all the heat? Not all heels necessarily get stuck in that bodyguard position or, stuff like that. Some heels get mega heat right off the bat, which, makes some guys feel like they're the greatest heels ever. And do you see where I'm kind of...
Yeah, I think that could happen. If you are billed as like the biggest, baddest heel in the business, I think that could easily happen, straight out of like coming out of a wrestling school or something, like just straight out of like training in general. I think at that point, it is up to the promoters to kind of cool the heels of these people. Throw them in situations that could potentially be embarrassing or humbling. I think that'd probably be the best for them. I think that would calm a lot of egos down. And it doesn't just come from like an internal place. It can come from outside sources as well. So I think it's best to keep some people in check when it comes to their characters, because a lot of people are like, I'm big and bad, and then they make a character who they think's big and bad, and they're just like, I'm the shit.
Now, do you think that translates back to the original question of the biggest misconception that fans have about creating characters and developing a wrestling persona?
Like fans wanting to start wrestling and making a character, or just like watching people.
Either or.
I think with, if fans come into, go to wrestling schools, I think they'll work with their trainers to figure out their characters. And I think it's good to spend time building a character before you start wrestling. That way you kind of have a bunch of stuff figured out. In terms of fans coming into it as fans and not really having any aspirations of being wrestlers, just seeing people in their characters, it could create, a sense of like, well, this guy's an asshole, and then you meet him and he is an asshole. And then that might put, a bad taste in your mouth when it comes to other people whose characters also are assholes. Right. But, and you don't want to go, and they don't want to go up to them because they're like, well, they're an asshole. I've met asshole wrestlers. Right. They're nothing. They're nothing. Right. So it varies. I think it varies based on the wrestler and the fan.
All right, man. Any upcoming shows, merchandise, anything like that you want to promote?
Yeah. Check out Pro Wrestling Epic and No Fold Pro Wrestling. I have Facebook, Vincent Sawyer, and Instagram, Vincent Sawyer Pro. That's about it.
All right, man. We're going to run it out just like we always do. Jaysin Static across all social media. Fight Club Wrestling Academy across all social media. And we got merchandise coming up. Vincent Sawyer knows about it. It's going to be fucking dope when we get this thing going. Don't have a place for it yet, but we will. Vincent Sawyer, good luck in your career, brother.